1. This just happened to me as I was getting ready for bed about 30 minutes ago. Now that the adrenaline is coursing through my system, I doubt I will be sleepy anytime soon tonight, so I thought I'd vent. I was just taking my dog out one last time before bed behind my apartment building. It's a pretty nice complex, mostly families and single, coupled professionals. And quiet and peaceful. It's in the suburbs, just outside the city. And after years of living downtown, the past few months here have been a calming respite. There's a little nature walk behind my building that my dog loves to explore, but I work late. So at night we just go slightly outside the breezeway and she does her business in the ground cover. For context, I'm not a large person, and neither is my dog. I'm female, 5'8", and about 130 pounds. My dog is a dachshund and beagle mix, and weighs 22 pounds. We are not an intimidating-looking duo. She is ridiculously cute, friendly, and super unaware of dangerous situations, people, and completely untuned to any type of emotion I may be feeling. It's about 2 a.m., but I've always felt safe here, so I'm relaxed. Of course she is taking her time sniffing around, while I desperately encourage her to go potty, when all of a sudden she jerks her head to the entrance of the breezeway. I live on the ground floor in the front of the building. There's a guy, 20s, around 6'3" to 6'4", pretty built, shoulder-length twists, wearing a grey t-shirt and black shorts walking towards the entrance. At first I assumed he was visiting the neighbors across the hall, as he kind of lingered for a second in front of their door. They have a lot of people, mostly family, that visit often. Some of them are in their 20s and stop by late. I usually say hi to them if I'm taking my dog out after work, so I knew I didn't recognize him. But then he kept walking towards me, picking up his pace a bit. And it was then that I noticed he had a gun in his right hand by his side. I was initially distracted because he was nervously twisting a piece of his hair near his scalp with his left hand. The neighbors in the back two apartments probably wouldn't be expecting this guy at 2 a.m. brandishing an impressively large and menacing handgun, so that pretty much narrows down his intended target. He's also making direct eye contact with me. I'm sure all of this happened in a few seconds, but it felt like time had slowed down. At first I thought, that kind of looks like a gun. Then gun, then hopefully... Is there an orange tip? Then that's a big-ass gun. Then let's come up with some good ideas really fucking fast, and then finally your ass is about to get mugged. I did take a quick moment to admire the irony of getting robbed all the way up here in boring old Vinings. Well, I never had an issue in all the years of living in Atlanta. But crime can happen anywhere, and right now I have a bit of an issue. Up to this point, I've been frozen with a mixture of fear and horror. I decide, fuck this, I'm out. Right as he reached a distance where he was about 6 to 7 feet away, I cheerfully told my dog, "Good girl," and then started walking towards him. There really wasn't any other direction to go. Behind the apartment is the unlit nature area. That didn't seem like a great idea. To be frank, none of my ideas seemed good, but I had picked the casual, upbeat, pretend nothing is wrong route, and deep down I'm thinking this plan is fucked. Of course, my dog tries to make friends with the guy as he walks past. This dog has no sense in her head. At this point, time is moving so slow it might as well be going backwards. I pull her leash tighter and try to squeak out a cheerful sorry. Unsure of whether or not it landed, I dragged her to my front door as fast as I could, while trying to sound a casual "come on, girl," and praying I didn't get shot in the back. Turning my head back to that dude was one of the scariest things I have ever chosen to do. He only said one thing as we passed: "Hi, puppy." I didn't look back, just dragged my dog inside and locked the door. I am very thankful that he didn't try to follow me inside. I panicked, fight or flight stuff, and my decision was it's time to go and let's get out of here. The fear was awful, sheer dread in the pit of my stomach, unknowingness. Shaking like crazy, I threw my dog in my bed and called 911. I could barely speak to the 911 operator. I was so scared with the irrational thought that he might hear me calling through the door. Cops were out about 10 minutes later to look around and take a report. They were concerned and asked a lot of questions, but there's not much else they can do. It's now 4 a.m. and sleep is nowhere near. Random guy with the gun at 2 a.m., let's not meet. Edit. The courtesy officer that lives here is also a detective, and asked me about the incident. He said the description of the guy matched someone who's suspected of a few crimes in this area. He was kind of vague, but said he would bring a photo by to see if he looked like the same person. Needless to say, I've spent the past few days on edge. 2. When I was in my freshman year of college, I went to a small liberal arts college in the Midwest. I wasn't having the best time and missed my high school friends a lot. So 2 of my friends, C and L, drove up from our hometown so that we could road trip to see our other friend W that lived 2 hours away. W went to a pretty large state school known for being one of the top party schools in the country. So when we got to her dorm, we unsurprisingly started the night off with some drinks. We played drinking games in W's dorm for a while until we started to get tipsy and bored. They had recently changed the local law, and minors were no longer allowed in bars past 10 p.m. We were 19 and 20-year-olds and too afraid to sneak into the bars, but didn't feel like staying in. We decided it would be best to look for a house party instead. We found several, and ended up moving from house to house, getting progressively drunker throughout the night. L finally succumbed to the sheer amount of alcohol and had to head home. L didn't live on campus, so W left to go with her and head back to the dorms. C and I decided to stay at the house party for a while longer, even though we knew the 2-mile walk back to the dorms would be pretty brutal. We finally got tired around 3 a.m. and decided to head back to my friend's dorm. The wind outside was freezing and blowing hard, shitty Midwest winters, but thankfully we had brought our coats out that night. C and I started walking since the bus was out of service for the night and there were no cars around. Really, there were no people or cars or anything or anyone on the street. This was kind of surprising because of how much of a party town this was, even though it was winter. C and I walked for a bit before stopping in front of a couple of bars where there was a bench to smoke. When we noticed 2 guys still hanging around, bars close at 2 a.m., not that surprising. As I said, it's a college town, so you can usually expect a few drunk college kids roaming around in the early hours of the morning. They noticed us as soon as we sat down and walked over to us and started chatting. I don't remember their names now, but they talked with us about how they were new on campus and that they were foreign exchange students. Can't for the life of me remember where they said they were from. They also mentioned they were waiting for a ride to go home as they lived in the next town over. They seemed nice enough, so we kept talking to them for a while even though it was freezing and they were wearing t-shirts. Finally their ride shows up and they ask us to come with them. We declined because we had to get back to our friends. They kept pushing, telling us they'd bring us back early in the morning and it wasn't that big of a deal. Again we declined. After about 10 minutes they gave up on trying to get us to come with them and asked for hugs before they left. A little weird, but C and I were 19 and 20-year-olds with 0 common sense, and they seemed like nice enough guys, so we agreed. As soon as these guys went in for hugs, they gripped us as tight as they could, picked us both up off the ground and proceeded to try to pull us into their friend's vehicle. Panicked, we kicked them as hard as we could and screamed. This must have scared them a bit. I don't think they were expecting us to fight back. Because the 2 men put us down, jumped in their friend's car and sped off, leaving us in shock on the sidewalk. My friend and I just looked at each other and took off running to our friend's place. We made it back without incident. We didn't tell anyone about it except for L and W. CL and I left the next day and haven't really been back since. C and I sort of laugh about it now, and reminisce about it as just another crazy thing that's happened to us over the course of our friendship. I have no idea what would have happened to us if they were able to get us in the car. I don't really want to find out either. 3. From the time I was 5 until around 9, my mom would leave my siblings and I home alone. She was a single parent and didn't have anyone to rely on since my father was in and out of prison. So she always figured that she could just leave us little kids with one of the older kids. It was pretty routine for her to ask my brother and sister to watch their younger siblings. They would do it mostly, but for us younger kids, we would always be scared shitless by the antics that the oldest 2 would pull. I don't really remember many of these nights, but there is one that sticks in my head. I was probably 8. The oldest, who was 15 at the time, wasn't home. He said he didn't feel like watching us and told our mom he'd be back later that night. After she got back from grocery shopping, my mom didn't want to leave my 13-year-old sister all alone with boys that were 12 years old and 11 years old, or girls who were 10 and 8. So she decided to take my 12-year-old brother with her to the store because he has autism and was in a tantrum phase. Soon after my older brother left, my mom went over the rules that we'd all heard a million times before. They went like this: when I'm not here, we... To which we would reply with the rules. 1. Don't answer the door. 2. No one is to go in or out of the house. 3. Listen to who's watching you. Soon enough, my mom would ask my sister something along the lines of, "Are you sure you can do this? You've never watched him without your brother." My sister then told her it didn't matter, she could handle it. So after going over the rules again for the 3rd time and reminding us to call if anything went wrong, my mom left with my brother. Little did she know that every rule would be broken that night. That leaves us with a 13-year-old to watch 3 very chaotic children. After Mom leaves, we make sure the doors and windows are locked. Soon after this, the regular antics start. Just stupid things like joking about a murderer being in the house, pretending to call the police when we got too wild, and doing anything to keep us all under control and safe. I'm not sure what it was about this night, but my brother, the 11-year-old, had figured out that the antics were just to scare us. He wasn't having any of it. He tried to tell my 10-year-old sister and I that our sister was just trying to scare us. We wouldn't listen. Who tries to scare children that badly? I don't remember what it was she was doing that night, but whatever it was, it had my sister and I terrified. We were both crying and kept trying to get our older sister to call our mom, but she wouldn't. So when we heard the loud squeak that came with the front door unlocking, we were thrilled. Our amazing mom was back and she would keep us safe. I wanted to run downstairs to her, but something kept me planted in my 10-year-old sister's arms. A few minutes pass, and none of us have heard my mom yell up to us to help put stuff away, so we're all confused. She always calls us down after shopping. So I get up and go downstairs with my brother following close behind. Our stairs are right next to the door. We make it downstairs in our tiny apartment, and see the front door wide open. Immediately we know something isn't right, so my brother shuts the door and locks it. He's about to check the kitchen for our mom when suddenly the kitchen light turns on. So us, being 11 and 8, decide that we're going to scare the crap out of her. So we creep through the small distance from the front door to the kitchen, with my brother's hand on my mouth because I don't know how to be quiet. A few seconds later we reach the kitchen, and my brother, being taller than me, can see over the microwave on the counter. I feel his hand tighten over my mouth, and he grabs my arm and backs up and turns us into the half-bathroom. He shuts the door and locks it. He takes his hand off of my mouth, and I'm loud immediately. He tells me to be quiet, but I'm not. Thank God it's hard to hear almost anything from within that bathroom. After a few minutes, he gets me to quiet down. He lets go of my arm and tells me we have to go back upstairs, that Mom is busy. Somewhere in me, I know he's lying, but I listen anyways. He turns to the doorknob, but he seems horrified to open the door. He takes a breath, grabs my hand, and opens the door. He quickly and quietly walks to the staircase, all while pulling me along. We make it about halfway up the stairs before they creak, and loudly. After that, he starts to run up the stairs holding my hand. Around the last step, I fall and start to cry. Out of the panic I can feel radiating off my brother. He picks me up with a struggle and sets me on my feet and pulls me into the room with our sisters in it. He starts to cry and beg our 13-year-old sister to call my mom. He tells her what happened downstairs, and about a strange man being in the kitchen. My sister knows that she should call my mom, but she won't, because then my mom wouldn't let her babysit anymore, and we honestly can't afford one. Then the phone starts to ring, and my brother, being scared as hell, runs to answer it, hoping it's our mom. He picks it up and says hello. My 13-year-old sister grabs it from him and says hello before he grabs it back. She grabs it and puts it on speaker. On the other end, we hear heavy breathing. "Is your mom home?" My sister hangs up immediately. Rule number 1 has been broken, and we had no idea who it was that called. Not relevant, but we later found out it was my uncle, being very drunk, trying to find a place to stay for the night. We're all terrified now. Everyone wants to call Mom, but my sister knows that 2 rules have been broken, and that Mom can't find out because we can't afford a babysitter. So all she has to do is go into our 15-year-old brother's room. He has high-functioning autism and tends to hyperfixate on things for long periods of time. Around this time it was anything sharp, so darts, knives, swords, and whatever else. So in her mind it's the safest room because if anyone comes in, she can't protect us. After a few minutes, which felt like hours, we hear a loud bang. My oldest sister goes to investigate and tells my brother to watch his little sisters and keep them safe. He refuses to let her go alone, claiming to be the man of the house because he was the only boy there, and grabs a sword to go with her. She immediately takes the sword and says he can't use that. She leaves the room, comes back with a baseball bat from his room and hands it to him, asking again for him to stay. He agrees this time and sits in front of his little sisters. After she leaves, he gets up and says, "Come on," grabs a tennis racket and hands it to my sister and tells me to go into the bathroom and hide. Him and my sister venture off to check on things, and I follow. I didn't want to be all alone. Now every rule has been broken. We all end up downstairs. There is no one in the kitchen anymore. My 13-year-old sister is pissed that we all followed her and is telling us off when we hear another bang. It came from the basement. My oldest sister doesn't argue with us coming with her to check it out as long as she's in front and my brother is in the back. So we all venture into our basement. A heavy, solid wood table that my dad had gotten from my mom before they separated 6 years prior had been moved from the center of the room to the far wall where there was a window. The window was open and the table had shoe prints on it, along with a rusty hammer that had never been in our house before. Before our mom got home, my sister explained to us that we couldn't let our mom know what had happened that night. Again, we could not afford a babysitter. We were already struggling with bills and sometimes we wouldn't have any food for a day or two. So we never told our mom about what happened that night. Even if we did, I don't think she would have believed it. It always trips people out that my mom had 2 kids with autism out of 6. They're both high-functioning and boys, which autism is more common in. I'd also say they're both well-adjusted human beings, but I'm so glad they weren't there that night. They would have told my mom. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 428. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Well, just to give you guys a quick update on my shelf-building adventure of the weekend, not great, but not entirely disastrous. It's the shelving unit I got. It was an odd design, quite weak in the middle, and given that it's expected to carry a lot of CDs, DVDs, and books, as well as anything else you might want to put on it, I wasn't feeling very confident that it would be able to do that without at least half of it tipping over. So I was like, okay, so comes in 2 boxes, so I started assembling it, and I was looking through and was like, oh, surely that can't be all that holds it together. But sure enough it was, and it's basically, there's a proper name for it, but I can't remember it. It's the little metal peg that you screw into one end, and then you've got like a little screw nut that you pop into a hole in the other end, and there's a couple of dowels you use kind of as a guide to keep it straight. And you put it, and then you twist that, and that's what's meant to hold it. And this is MDF, that's medium density fiber board, for those of you wondering. So it's not the most sturdy of materials anyway, and it's certainly not going to hold any great strain. But I put it together, and sure enough, as expected, although I was careful, while I was adjusting it to then put the back on, which is ultimately what strengthens it, it broke in 2. So I had to try and fix all the little metal pegs back in, and I got most of them sorted. And eventually I got it built, and I thought, yeah, that's not gonna stand up to, well, it was standing up, but metaphorically, it's not going to stand up to any long-term use. So I then thought, okay, if I could put a couple of little metal plates at the side, I could spray them black, I could screw them in, and there was like a silver, like brackets that came with it. You're meant to screw on the top that stop it from tipping over. So at least they thought of that, but they weren't long enough because I don't think they accounted that you might have a skirting board in the way. So they wouldn't have been long enough for it. And I thought, well, I'll need them as well. So eventually I had to go online, and sure enough, the thing I was looking for is called it's a brace plate. I think that's the proper name for it, which is basically just a little plate of metal, and thankfully they actually make them in black, so that saved me another job as well. So ordered a pack of them. That'll let me strengthen up the sides, so at least I had to spend a little bit more money, but at least it wasn't a complete loss on this thing. Because it does look nice, and as long as I'm not concerned about it falling over, it will do the job. So I'm going to have to put 4 of those on, either size, to strengthen that, and that'll help. I might even put one on at the back, we'll see. And I then got some longer top brackets that'll go on, and they'll stabilize on top of from tipping over. But these are all things you don't think you're going to have to do when you decide, I just want to build what is essentially a bookcase. Anyway, some of them arrived today, and the others should arrive tomorrow. So if I have time tomorrow, I might get it done quickly, because it will be a quick job. Get that done, and then I can get back to work on recording and building up stories and making videos, so I can take my birthday week off. And this outro ran on way longer than I thought it would. Okay, I'm going to hush up for now and head off. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.